Dr. Shabir, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
My pleasure to be on.
I want to talk to you today about Squid Game. It's the hottest show on Netflix right now. And the idea is that these people who are economically disadvantaged are competing, playing children's games, but competing to their death in order to earn some money, to win the big prize. So, Dr. Shabir, I wanted to ask you, because the show does have a lot of violence, a lot of gore. How do we decide, as Muslims, whether a show like Squid Games is appropriate to watch?
So the decision is not easy. If we comb the internet looking at fatwa sites and we ask, is it even permissible to watch movies? Most likely the answer is going to be no, because of the violence, most likely because of the sex and nudity, profanity, and so on. That is very common in the movies nowadays. Understandingislam.com, understanding-islam.com, and gives a little bit more of a positive view of movies in general. This is written by Moiz Amjad, who has written a lot, and he often takes a very reasonable approach to things. He speaks about the interaction between men and women in the movies that would go against Sharia norms. But other than that, he recognizes that movies can carry good, positive messages, and it can be used for good. So one has to be discerning, obviously, in deciding between the good and the bad that is out there. Now, there are some Muslims who will say, "I'm not going to watch movies at all," and it so happens that some years ago we were conducting a training program for young people, and one of the youth was trying to explain a point, and she said to the other, like one girl said to another girl within the class discussion, "It's like in that movie," and the other girl said, "Well, I don't know. We don't watch movies." So that shows two different approaches within the Muslim community, even among devout people, among people who would be the sort to come and attend a Muslim training program. So one watches, the other one says, "No, this is like, what do you mean? We don't watch movies." We have this diversity among Muslims, and we have to recognize this diversity. And if one does not watch movies and gets by and does other things which is stimulating for the mind and helps one to develop and be aware of society and pop culture, then that's all good. And of course, that Muslim has avoided many of the negatives that we already mentioned. If, on the other hand, one is part of this popular culture in which everyone is watching movies, the majority of the population are subscribers to Netflix, and all of the blood and gore and nudity and so on is very, very prevalent in these shows, to the extent that now people have become inured to that. Like, they don't notice it anymore. It's just part of life. So what we say to those people, we say, well, you have to be discerning. And now we have a younger generation. We have children, we have grandchildren. We can't say to them, all movies are bad, you can't watch anything. And it looks like almost anything that you watch will have something that is objectionable from a pure Islamic Sharia standpoint. Can I give an example of that?
Sure, yeah.
So
I'm sure you know, because you always watch movies with my son, Adam.
Exactly. I'll be watching with my grandsons, and we're watching Simba's Pride, for example. And this obviously is an animated movie about lions and their interaction with each other. And then there is this scene where this lioness has left her pride because her father wouldn't agree with her to be in a relationship with, I think Simba was the one. So she leaves, which is not a good message for children to have. Like, you disagree with your father's wishes, so you just leave the pride. All right, you go after the man that you want. So she goes and she meets up with Simba, and then they're floating on the water. And the song says, you've come to where the passion fruit is ripe, or something of this nature, right?
The movie really made an impact on you.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember this scene, and I'm thinking, like, what are the movies teaching the children? Because this is meant for very young children.
Mm-hmm.
So Well, we can't say that it's all haram, and we can't watch anything at all, because then the children will go back to school, and that brave girl in our classroom situation that I just described, could say with full confidence, we don't watch movies. And I'm sure if she's challenged, she would be able to defend her position, why she's right. But most children will not be in that position, especially younger ones. So they'll go back to school, and everybody will say, "Okay, we watched that," and if the one who doesn't watch would be really the odd one out, and hardly anybody wants to be the odd one out. Most people like to fit in with their environment and so on. So how can those Muslims who are interested in being part of this popular culture be discerning?
And apparently, Dr. Shabir, there are young children who have watched Squid Game, because some schools have been warning parents to not allow their children to watch it, because the children in the schoolyard are playing those games.
Yeah. So in commenting upon this, allow me to speak about one of the ways in which parents can be discerning and helping and how parents can help their youth and children to decide between what's good and bad among the movies that are out there. But I'm saying this almost as a preface to the point which I want to make in a comeback to what you just said. So there is a website, commonsensemedia.org. This website is very interesting in that it gives ratings of movies based on a variety of categories. Like it will tell you, the amount of profanity. So in this case, Squid Game is rated like, I believe it was 4 out of 5 or 3 out of 5, I don't remember. The use of like drinking alcohol, using drugs, and so on, because these are depictions that will have an impact on the minds of young people. So what's the rating for that? So it's probably like 3 out of 5. Nudity, 4 out of 5. Violence, 5 out of 5. So it gives you this kind of rating. Very interestingly, they have just recently introduced a new category, which is diversity. And
interesting.
Yes, does it represent diverse peoples, cultures, and age and so on, and different sexual orientations and all of that. So how does it rate for diversity? So this one rates 3 out of 5. So now coming to the point that you were making about kids watching, where do they get these ratings from? So they get ratings from both parents and children, and they separate the two categories. Now, it so happens that every movie, as you know, comes with already a rating, maybe from a censorship board or something like this. So as far as I understand, Squid Game is rated for 16 plus. But now, Common Sense Media separates the ratings from the parents and the children. So what do parents say? So parents say this is good for 17 plus. So parents seem to have a higher expectation of the age that this should be appropriate for. But then what do children say? Children say it's good for 14 plus.
Okay.
So that means the children are looking at it, rated it 16 plus, but no, we're 14 and we can still watch it. It's fine. And what is interesting that I found is that the last time I checked, the number of reviews from parents were 42, but the number of reviews from children was 142.
Wow.
So that means more than 3 times the number of children must have been watching it in order to be able to do these reviews. I mean, on a simplistic count. There could be many factors. Maybe the parents watched, but they're not into writing reviews and so on. But the stark number and the difference between the two gives me the quick impression that a lot of children, perhaps even more children, are watching this sort of thing than our parents. And we need to call on parents to be aware of what their children are watching, and not to be policing over them, but to be helpful to them, to offer guidance. And when you watch a show with your children, you need to discuss the contents as well. Not in a school book fashion to say, okay, now we finished. Okay, now half
what
an hour
did you
discussion.
Learn?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
But in casual conversation, maybe at dinner, after or before, or whatever, we talk about concepts. We talk about what's good and what's bad, and help them to navigate through this difficult world in which things are being thrown at them. And the discerning Muslim has to be the one that is not so fully immersed. You know, there's a hadith that says, Safiya, that the time will come when the pious person, the righteous one, will be the one who says to people, don't commit adultery in the middle of the road, do it on the side. So, this speaks to a time that, evils will be so rampant that you can hardly extricate yourself from the society in which these evils are all around you. And the best you can do in a certain situation is to, follow the narrow path towards the edge of the popular culture.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Dr. Shabir.
You're welcome.
If you enjoyed this video, click like and subscribe. And please donate to support our work at QuranSpeaks.com.